Oh, seeing your captain go for those 4 tries, 5 goals. Mr. Pappenhausen, thank you very much for a fantastic week. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video from A Man Talks NRL SuperCoach. In today's video, we're going through the roundup number 4, or what I like to call blowout games everywhere. We had some high scoring games this round with a lot of big SuperCoach points on offer, so let's get straight into it. If you guys are also new around here, do please consider subscribing to the channel, and if you guys like the video, would really appreciate a thumbs up on it, and if you guys haven't done so already, would really appreciate also a follow on Twitter. I just got on there recently and I've just started to kind of get amongst the community and also just post some of my thoughts during some games that I'm watching, and also some trade scenarios that I think during the week. But apart from that, let's get into the video. So the first game of the round saw the Sea Eagles take on the Panthers, with the Panthers absolutely walloping the Sea Eagles 46-6. I think this kind of scoreline is probably what people were expecting coming into this game. You know, Panthers on red hot form and the Sea Eagles just absolutely looked terrible. So not really too many surprises in terms of the actual result and probably the scoreline. We had a really good bunch of performers from the Panthers. So 4 guys getting into the tons. You know, we had Luai, To'o, Matt Burton and Cleary all get over 100 points. Luai just looks absolutely electric on that left side of the Panthers team. I think kind of do have some regrets maybe potentially going Dylan Brown over Luai. That was one decision I was kind of toying up pre-season. Obviously if I had gone with Luai, I would have been way up in terms of the ranking and the points, but can't be too mad at the decision. But I think he's potentially staking a claim as maybe the number 1 5-8 to get in. You know, this week obviously there was a lot of discussion about bringing in the likes of Cody Walker and Cam Munster based on the next month of games that they've got. And neither of those two really performed, I think, to the level that people were expecting. You know, Cody Walker got a double, but he still only ended up on about 67. Cam Munster scored a try, and I think he only got 62. But we saw Luai just absolutely take over on that left side and, you know, rack up 128 points. So I think there is some valid claim to potentially looking at Luai to be someone to get into your 5-8 spot if you don't have already, say, Cam Munster or Cody Walker like myself. You know, I think there is some valid argument in that he's got, you know, less of a chance really to play Origin, and he plays in the round 13 bye, but we know that Cam Munster is a lock for Queensland and Cody Walker's got a good chance for New South Wales as well. So I think there really is a good claim for Luai. I think the Panthers matchups coming up are a little bit up and down, but he's shown even in the tough match against the Storm, he still scored around 46, which is not a bad floor to be honest. So I think Luai has got tremendous upside. Brian To'o, I think, is obviously, I'm super happy to have owned him and brought him into my side a couple of weeks ago. You know, he's shown that he's got amazing base stats and can still get in the 50s to 60s without scoring a single try. Give him 2 tries and he'll go on to a massive score here. So I think Brian To'o, if you don't have him already, he's looking at the moment maybe the number 1 or number 2 centre wing at the moment, and he's fairly reasonably priced still at about 520k. Obviously that is expensive, but in comparison to say the likes of Brett Morris, who's about 620, I think, well, it's probably gone even more than that now to be honest. He's looking a great buy, and I think a lot of people really are struggling in that centre wing spot. You know, they're going with 4 cheapies, and I think having someone like To'o really solidifies that position for you. So 100% he would be a buy for me, and as you can see there, I've just said get To'o in. Matt Burton, really interesting. I thought he was going to be more of a kind of halfback. I didn't actually know he had that kind of flexibility playing the centres, but he looked really good. And we know with Matt Burton's playing in the centres, I think that makes To'o even more of an attractive player, because Burton's got that, you know, he's got that ball playing ability, and we see at times that when Stephen Crichton plays inside of To'o, you know, he doesn't really pass the ball that many times. You know, he's more of a ball runner. He likes to go on his own. But with Matt Burton, he's probably going to be a bit more unselfish, and he's got better ability probably to ball play. And that means probably better opportunities for the likes of Brian To'o. So if Matt Burton does stay there for the foreseeable future, then I think that could be a really, really nice addition to Brian To'o and his scoring potential. Cleary, you know, again, just doing what Cleary does. He was on about 80 points before updates, but he was, you know, he's given, I think, a couple of attacking stat contributions, and he's done really well again. I think he was obviously going to be very heavily captained this round, and he obviously still did really good, but obviously we'll touch on Ryan Pappenhausen later. When you look at the comparison, you know, it does make Cleary's 103 look a bit more underwhelming, but you know, that's just the nature of this round in particular. We're looking at 103 captain as underwhelming. But again, Cleary is just showing why he's the number 1 halfback. If you don't have him, just get him in. And he's really showing his consistency. One player I do want to touch on from the Panthers is also Kikau. You know, I did say in the preseason that, you know, when you get someone like Kikau, you really have to ride the roller coaster that he is. He has these games where he goes and gets 30, 40, but then we know he's got this amazing upside where he can get into the hundreds. And he's done that, you know, in the first 4 rounds of the season. I think he's had this score of 92 and another 100 plus. And outside of that, I think he's got 2 scores like in the 40 and 50s. Like if you're a player who really likes having that real high upside, someone like Kikau, to be honest, could be an attractive player to get into your second row forward. Not quite my kind of taste, I guess, of a second row forward. I'd rather prefer the more consistent guys. But Kick-Out, I think, obviously is going to be a really good buy for anyone who's looking for that a really high upside player in their second row forward. Fisher-Harris with a good 90-point game. The thing with Fisher-Harris, I think he got a line break assist, potentially a try assist as well. So I think he got bumped up by about 20 points normally than he wouldn't really get. So I think we're still looking at a good base and power of about 70, which I think for him is good. For Fisher-Harris, though, he just kind of sometimes is a little bit of a tease. He gets these really good scores, strings a couple of them together, and you look to buy him, and then he goes back to getting like 30s and 40s, or sometimes in the 50s as well. Like, he's got a really good base stat floor, but I think in your second row forward and your front row forward, there potentially are still some other better options than him. Aside from that, Momirovski is probably looking to be a good pod centre wing. If you don't want to go, say, for the likes of Kurt Capewell, he only got the 51, and that included a try, which is a bit of a concern. But, he has shown that he's got that attacking potential. He did it last week against Storm, scoring a try. So I think, if you've got Capewell in your centre wing, again, you'll happily take his base of around... if that 50 is his floor, you'd happily take that. At the moment, I've got him in my second row, but that's just kind of just how my team's structured. I'll eventually look to do, we'll flick him down to my centre wing. And Charlie Staines, only the 39, but he did look really good for that little brief amount of time where he was playing at the fullback spot. And so we'll see in Teamless Tuesday whether he does actually get the nod over Crichton, because Crichton, to be honest, didn't set the world alight playing at fullback. In terms of the Sea Eagles, honestly, there's really no one I'm not interested in at the Sea Eagles aside from Josh Schuster. He was the most popular buy probably this week. He's going to go up quite a lot in value. Scoring 47 in base from a 203k cheapie, you'll happily take that. So I got him into the team, trading him for little this round, and pretty happy with that purchase. I think if he does look to be kind of nailed on to maybe that second row forward edge, obviously Sirinen will come back eventually, but Gazewski, I think he was a last minute drop to the bench, which maybe shows that Schuster is more in favour, and that's a good sign for us owners. The real only last player I wanted to touch on was Jason Saab, or maybe you can call him the AE Nightmare. Only scoring the 5. Look, I'm really happy that I traded him out when I did for Ryan James. I didn't have to cop any of his price decrease. If you own him, I think I would still just hold him, to be honest. Like, he's going to go down in value again, and at that point I think you're just kind of waiting then. Just sit him into your second row forward bench, just hope that eventually he costs her for a couple of tries and then his value can uptick, but you're never really going to play him, and I wouldn't really just sell him because I think his value's gone down that much now that there's really no point. They'd be wasting a bit of a trade, and instead I'd be looking at maybe guys with a little bit higher price than him if you're looking to bolster up your centre wing. So the next game of the round, we saw the Bulldogs take on the Rabbitohs, with the Rabbitohs again winning this very comfortably 38-0. Quite surprising though, I wasn't able to actually watch this game. I was on the road at the time, and I saw the final score, and I, with massive dread, clicked on the SuperCoach stats because I was like, what the hell? 38 points they've racked up. Cody Walker, who I don't own, I'm death riding essentially. I thought he was going to get 120 plus, and he only got the 67 with the double. So I'm very happy with that kind of low scoring effort. Obviously 67 is a good score, but with 2 tries you'd expect him normally to go above that. And I feel like I have dodged a bit of a bullet as well. I think Walker is looking to be on the sidelines for a week due to that elbow hit he did. Potentially, I think that might be 2 weeks, but I think he seems like he might have taken like an early plea, and it's just going to be the 1 week that he's out for. So I feel like I did dodge a bullet because I was considering bringing him into the team this week. Obviously, I would have happily taken the 67, but based on the other trades that I did, I'm definitely up by not going with him. And Latrell, again, chipped in pretty nicely with a 74. One thing I wanted to touch on as well with Rabbitohs was obviously Damien Cook. He delivered again. He's, again, kind of like Kick-Out to a lesser degree. He does have that inconsistency. I think it can depend on the game, but we saw how damaging he was through the middle. He had made a couple of good line breaks out of dummy half, and just Cody Walker in support. If you owned, say, the combination of those two, you would have been really happy seeing that in the game. In terms of the centre wings, I think there's been quite a bit of discussion. Obviously, the Rabbitohs have got a stellar draw for the next month or so, and not quite everyone could stretch the likes of, say, Cody Walker, because I think a lot of people still have cheap 5'8s and say like Connor Watson, Matt Moylan. Potentially some people might still be holding Lockie Lamb. So, I think a lot of people were trying to stretch to Cody Walker, but they couldn't quite do it. So instead, they wanted to get a bit of piece of the Rabbitohs backline and go with their centre wings instead. So the likes of Dan Gagai and Johnson in particular, given that they play on the left, and Mansour to a lesser degree. So I guess there was a bit of a question as which one would you maybe go for. Obviously, I think if you had the budget, you'd go for someone like Mansour, because he's got the base statistics, pretty decent floor, and he chipped in with a try this round. He's got 74. Problem with Mansour that is we can definitely say that the Rabbitohs prefer to play on their left side, and that really does limit the impact of someone like Mansour, whereas last year when he was playing at the Panthers, he was playing on the left. So he was getting a lot of the attack from, the likes of Luai, Kickout and Cleary all kind of going to the left side. So that really does kind of work against him playing in the Rabbitohs. So Gagai and Johnson are the way a lot of guys were looking. But again, this is kind of one of those things where they're a little bit hot and cold. Gagai, he updated to 49. I think he was sitting around 30. He obviously had a good game against the Roosters last week. But Johnson as well, he got 33 points there and scoring a try. He just does not have any base in him at all. And that's one reason I don't really like going for guys who are really dependent on tries, because even if they do score the tries, their scoring floor is still really quite low. It really takes sometimes him to get like a double before he gets maybe into the 70s and 80s. And while I fully expect that he will probably score quite a few tries in the next month or so, that really does kind of put me off when I know for, I think, about 50k more, I can go for someone like Brian To'o, and I know I'm going to get 55 from him every week. He doesn't have to score me a try. So I think there's valid argument still to kind of to go with one of these other backline players like a Gagai or a Johnson, Campbell Graham to a lesser degree as well, because I think he had a really good end to the year last year. But I think he was playing on the left at the back end of last season when he was really profiting from that damaging Rabbitohs attack. On the right side though, he just doesn't seem to be getting quite so much ball, and he's going down in value quite a bit. So he's someone you could pick up on the cheap, I think. But so far, I still haven't really been too, kind of thrilled, I guess, with his points output to warrant picking him up. The last thing I wanted to touch on with the Rabbitohs, I guess, was kind of Cam Murray or Jai Arrow. I think Cam Murray obviously was a very popular second row forward option. He just hasn't really set the world alight. He's got around the 50 and 60s. His base stats are good. He's averaging around 50 to 55. We're just not seeing him kind of have the attacking threat that we would hope for. Obviously, that might change in the next few weeks when they've got these easy games coming up, and we could see him then get into the 70s and 80s, but we just haven't quite seen it yet. As opposed to say Jai Arrow, who's coming off the bench, still only playing like 40 to 45 minutes, but his output in that time is actually quite good. He's looking to offload quite a bit more than say Murray, and when he comes on, he's really looking to put his hand up and do a lot of runs and get into a lot of tackling as well. So I think there potentially is an argument, if you do hold Cam Murray, though, to be honest, I would probably just hold him at this point. He's probably dropped a bit of value, but I think then stretching, you're going to have to be paying like 150, 200k more to get to the likes of your Crichtons, your Fafitas, maybe Tohu Harris, for example. So I think that really does require a lot of, creating funds somewhere in your team, and you don't want to really break your team apart for that, I think. But, if you are in the market for, say, like a low 500k second row forward, someone like, Jai Arrow at the moment, he is delivering, but I think there is still some question marks over his minutes, so I don't know if I'd personally go there myself. I think obviously if you start with Arrow over Murray, you're probably winning at this point in time, given the price difference at the start of the season, and he's probably matching him in terms of points. With the Bulldogs, honestly, there is zero interest for me in terms of their players. Hetherington has done decent this game with 55, but based on what I've seen prior to that, he just doesn't show the work rate consistently enough, so I just have no interest in them. And, they haven't been able to score any points really, so I'm not interested at all in any of their attacking players. So the next game of the round was the match of the round for my SuperCoach team. The Storm winning this game 40-6. Obviously, you can see there I've got the captain armband on Ryan Papenhuyzen, and he scored 197. Absolutely electric. I think it was 4 tries in like 11 minutes, and with the goal kicking just one after the other, it was so sweet to see. So very happy with Ryan Papenhuyzen that I went with him as the captain this week. I think he was captained by about 14% of the game at the moment, which isn't like extraordinarily high, but it's not low either. So I think there's going to be a lot of big scores this round, given that there were a lot of other players who were very popular who scored into the hundreds as well this round. But yeah, Papenhuyzen, I think, just again, this kind of just shows the upside that these fullbacks nowadays have. They're so involved in the attacking threat, and how, especially someone like, say, Papenhuyzen, Teddy, the way that they play, they're always hovering around the ball. So, if there's any half break, offloads, they're always popping up, and that really gives them the opportunity to run, get line breaks. And then when it comes to set plays, they get involved in like being the final player to pass the ball to their outside men. So they really just rack up the attacking stats. So I think, if you're not an owner of, say, like a Teddy or a Papenhuyzen or even like a Latrell to an extent, I really would be looking to get these guys in. Obviously, I think he's set to go up quite a bit in value. I think he'll probably get into the 700k mark quite comfortably because of this 197. And so I think that will obviously be in his rolling average now for 3 rounds. And so he's going to be quite high in price. So I think if you're not an owner of Papenhuyzen, this week, obviously, I'd still recommend him strongly as a buy. I think the Storm's draw is, again, very good. They're coming up against the Bulldogs in round 5. So you could, it wouldn't be unrealistic to expect Papenhuyzen to get over 100 points again. So yeah, Papenhuyzen, 100% would advise to get him in. Christian Welch, I was pretty happy with that 71-point effort. I think he updated quite a bit. It was really good to see him offloading. I think he had 5 offloads, and that really does boost up his attacking points. I know a lot of people are looking to offload Welch to say the likes of Payne Haas, or using the right front row forward, second row forward duels, doing like a Christian Welch, like an Angus Crichton or a Dave Fafita. I don't think that's necessarily like a bad trade, but with a 71-point effort, he has shown to be a little bit up and down. But if he is offloading more consistently, I'm very happy to still hold him, I think. And Payne Haas didn't set the world alight, only scoring the 55. So I think, if that's going to be in his average for a little bit of time, hopefully Payne Haas will go down in value. And I can hopefully maybe just delay that trade of Welch to Haas if they're kind of still not too dissimilar in terms of their point scoring. Cam Munster was quite interesting. He scored 62, which included a try. So it relatively was a little bit quiet. But I think it was just more of a case of how the game was played out. It was more of, it was the Pappenhausen show, essentially. So obviously I wouldn't be looking to move on Munster by any means. But the 62 point, you would be a little disappointed with that, given that he scored a try as well. I think it's one of those things where Munster just seems to do better against the bigger teams, So, you could make an argument that, against these easy teams, he's not going to do as well. I don't think that's really valid. But we saw him get an 80 plus against the Panthers. And I think that just really shows that the kind of player he is. He's a big game player. So, obviously, it's a little bit disappointing. You'd hope for more. But again, they're coming up against the Bulldogs in the next round. So, if you're a Munster owner, you'd still be looking to maybe potentially vice-captain or even captain him to an extent. Justin Olam has been ticking along quite nicely as well. He looked really quite attacking up through the middle with some strong running. So, I did recommend him as a bit of a pod centre given the upcoming draw for the Storm, and I don't think he's doing too badly. So, just talking about some of the Broncos players, I think, Jordan Ricky and Tessie New scoring that 55 and the 47, very good for us owners. They're showing that they're good cash cows. Tessie New, I didn't actually play this round. I played Bailey Simonson over him. Obviously, in hindsight, I probably should have played New over Simonson. And if I looked at the stats a little bit more, New's base is a lot more than Simonson's, so I probably should have gone with him. But it's good to see that he can still score 47 in a game where he doesn't score a try up against one of the best teams in the comp. So I think Tessie New, he's definitely, I think the play with him potentially could be that he'll hopefully just keep going up in value. And he's definitely a player, I think. Even in these tough games, he's shown that he's got a pretty solid base of around 30 to 35. But hopefully over time, he can go up nicely in value, and I can upgrade him via Kurt Capewell and bring in hopefully a gun second row forward, potentially like a Madison if he's dropped in price given he's got that low score in his rolling average, or maybe even up to like an Angus Crichton who I still don't quite own yet. So that might be the play with New, and again similarly with Jordan Ricky. I think those are obviously the kind of long-term plays with these guys, but at the moment, if they're just sitting in say you're 17, I don't think they're bad plays to be honest, and definitely would be continuing to hold them. Payne Haas with the 55 I kind of just mentioned just before. I think with the 55-point effort, hopefully that's good for us non-owners. He hopefully should go down in value if he does similar over the next couple of games. But it was his first game back. Obviously I'd expect match fitness wasn't quite up to 100%. But I'd expect him to still be one of the top 2 or 3 front row forwards come year end. So definitely going to be a watch on how he goes in the next round. If he has another low game, I won't be looking to bring him in then, and hopefully he can continue to go down in price before picking him up a little bit cheaper. To be honest, apart from that, Tevita Pangai only with the 32 points. He came off the bench this round, which wasn't ideal for owners. But Pat Carrigan has got, I think, a 1-week suspension. So we could see Tevita Pangai back into the starting lineup. Again, coming off the bench doesn't seem to quite have the impact that he did starting. So if you're an owner, he's obviously done really well to begin the season. I would kind of wait another round to see how he looks starting again. So I don't think he's like an immediate trade out just because he had one low score. I would just kind of see how the team will shape up on Tuesday and if he's named to start again. And again, when Carrigan comes back from his suspension, then I think you have a better indicator of where he kind of lies in the pecking order. So the next game of the round was the Sharks versus Cowboys, which again was another blowout. Sharks taking this one comfortably 48-10. As you can see here, I don't have any players in this game, and to be honest, it's probably going to stay that way for a little bit. Will Kennedy on the Sharks has looked really good at fullback. He's had some good scores. He's obviously got 123, and I think he's scored in the 60s and the 70s in his first few other games. But at fullback, it's just so competitive. You're not going to be taking out the likes of Teddy, Pappenhausen, Latrell for someone like Will Kennedy, in my opinion. Obviously, everyone has their own little strategy, and that could be a real good, real strong point of difference, going for Will Kennedy over those kind of big 3. That's just not something I'm going to be looking to be doing. I think Will Kennedy, obviously, he's shown that he's got good point scoring potential, but again, this game was against the Cowboys, so I wouldn't read too much into it. And again, similarly would say like Chad Townsend, if anyone's looking at like a backup half to Nathan Cleary, yes, he did score really well, but I just don't think I'm going to be going there myself. And I think we've got other good, cheaper halfback options, who I'll touch on a little bit later. and they'll be coming into our sides if you don't know them already. The last guy I wanted to touch on with the Sharks was Matt Moylan. Obviously, I think he was really heavily sold this week to Josh Schuster, and I don't think that was a bad trade at all. But if you held him, I think a lot of people were due to the matchup, and he's done really well. Scored a try as well, getting the 60 points. So I think he still looks to be a decent cash cow option if you didn't go to Schuster. But I think again, I can't quite remember what the Sharks matchups are in the next few rounds. But he's not someone you're going to be looking to long-term hold anyway. He's going to just be purely a cash cow who you can step up to a gun 5'8". With the Cowboys, I think the only real player I want to kind of touch on was maybe Val Holmes. He scored the 70 points, and he's actually done pretty well in his last 3 games with the 61 and 2 70s. And the Cowboys actually have some decent games coming up. So he's definitely someone I'm keeping an eye on to see if I can maybe bring him into the center wing. Say up if you have like a Jason Saab and you really want to get rid of him, you could look to maybe upgrade Saab to Holmes potentially. Myself, I've got Fusatua, who I'm not playing at the moment, and he hasn't really set the world alight. So he might be a trade out target to Val Holmes as well. I think it just depends, I guess, on how the matchups are for the Cowboys, but they just haven't looked really threatening at all in attack. But still, they've underperformed, but Holmes has still done pretty well. Obviously you'd happily take 61, 70 and 70 in your center wing spot. So he's really the only guy that I'm looking to consider from the Cowboys. But to be honest, the way that they're playing, they just don't look good at all, and there's no other interest for me. So the next game of the round was the Titans versus the Raiders, with the Raiders taking this one out 20 points to 4. I think it was really refreshing to see this game after watching all the blowouts that we had seen before that. This was a really tight contest. In terms of the Titans, Tino had a massive game. He played over 70 minutes, scoring 90, and it was really positive to actually listen to Justin Holbrook's post-match conference. He mentioned that it wasn't planned to have Tino play such high minutes, but he said if the situation calls for it, if it's a tough game, he'll leave Tino out there. I think that's really encouraging. It shows that they've got a lot of faith in him, and if that means if it comes to these really tough games, if they're coming up against a side with a really strong forward pack like the Raiders, for example, that probably means that the coach has got more faith in Tino and will hopefully play in bigger minutes. I think a lot of people were looking to sell Tino. He hadn't really done too well, and obviously a lot of people would be regretting that after that 93-point effort. I'm really happy that I've held with him. I was never really looking to offload him anytime soon. I think he had shown good signs, and he still hasn't really got any attacking stats. He did get, I think, a line break in this game, but we haven't seen any tries from him yet. And I think at his price, he was 505k when we bought him. I don't understand why people were expecting massive 70, 80 point efforts from him. He was basically a rookie last season as well. But seeing that faith in him from the coach is a really encouraging sign. Dave Fafita, who I did bring in this week over Cody Walker, really happy with that move. Scored 88. There's a big argument I think happening in the community. Is Dave Fafita a must-have, or is he a luxury? The way that he's playing at the moment is looking like a must-have, but obviously no one really in the game is a must-have. But I think he's a very good option in your second row forward. The reason I wanted to bring him in was that he had a break even I think around 2 or 4 this round, and so I really wanted to capitalize on his value increase, because I thought if I wasn't going to get him in this week, it would be really hard to stretch to him moving forward. So really happy that I made the call to bring him in, and I upgraded Full Miono from him, so that was a massive upgrade. But the way that he's playing, he's scoring about 70 points in base and power. So base and power is essentially your tackles, your runs, but also your offloads and your tackle breaks. Every time he runs, he just seems to get tackle breaks for fun, and he's looking to offload quite a bit too. So his floor, which I think obviously was a bit of a concern coming into the season, that he normally doesn't have quite a high base, but given the ease that he's breaking tackles, he's probably scoring about 60 to 70 pretty comfortably every round. And we know what kind of upside he has. He scored obviously tries in the Broncos and Cowboys games, and comfortably went over 100. So I think Dave Fafita is looking like really, really solid second row forward option. I'm really happy that I got him into the team. And so 100% would recommend him as a buy. I don't quite know what his value is going to be after this week. I imagine he'll get very high into maybe close to the 700k mark. But I think if you can fit him into your team, he's looking a really strong option. On the opposite end of the spectrum from Tino and Fafita, we have Jamal Fogarty with a solid 0 points. So in my previous video on my trade, I did show my team here. I did have the reserve on him, but luckily I switched to, I think I put Mitch Barnett in the reserves, and I took off Fogarty and I put it onto, I think, Connor Watson. Can't quite remember, but I'm so happy that I didn't reserve him. That would have been absolutely tragic. Obviously, he looked like he had picked up a knock early into the game, and that really was affecting him. He didn't even goal kick, and that really hurts. Anyone who played him or reserved him that that must sting. Fortunately enough, there is ready-made replacements I think have shown this week, with Sean O'Sullivan potentially, or Sam Walker, who I think is a more likely replacement for him. So yeah, really hurts if you're an owner of him. There's nothing really, you obviously can't predict that. He's done pretty decently, I guess, to begin the season, but we'll find out, I guess, during the week what the extent of his injury was. But either way, with that 0, yeah, I think he's got to be a trade-out option soon. With the Raiders, a few good performances from them. Josh Papali'i getting the try, scoring 92. Ryan Sutton has actually now scored, I think, tries in back-to-back games, so he's looking pretty decent. I think it keeps getting shown that the Raiders really do have a lot of attack from their middle forwards and their edge forwards as well. And I think it really does come as a bit of a detriment to their wingers who they don't really use. So I think picking up Raiders forwards is not a bad idea. Obviously Hudson Young I think was quite popular, but only scored a 49, because obviously he had scored some tries in the first few games as well, which did bump up his scores. But yeah, so that's kind of what you'd expect, I think, out of the Raiders, with a lot of their forwards getting the tries. Josh Hodgson has been ticking along pretty nicely after a couple of lower scoring games. He obviously scored, I think, on the 88, something like that last round. And then a 63 this week, which is again pretty decent score. But I think at the moment a lot of people wouldn't be owning him. I think a very popular combination with the emergence of Schuster will now just be Jaden Brayley and Connor Watson, and they both did pretty well, so I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. And Ryan James I did want to touch on as well. He scored 52 points and he was given the nod to start in this game, and so I'm getting a lot more comfortable. I'm very comfortable essentially now with his position in the 17 with the Raiders. I don't really have too many more question marks. I think apparently it came out that Ricky Stewart gave him the start in this game because he wanted him to, basically because he was playing against his old team. So Stewart was like, yeah, I'll give you the start. I think that really does show good faith from Stewart in Ryan James, and he's done really well for them to begin the season. So I don't think he's shown any reason why he should fall out of the 17, and he's looking like still a very good hold cash cow option in your front row or your second row. So very happy to hold him. I think he even potentially can come a play in your 17. If you've got other injuries in your side, he's still coming in with around 40 to 50 in just base, which is really solid to see. Bailey Simonson, who I did play, only scored about 37, which again is not, it's not nothing major. It's no 5 from Jason Saab, but he's not quite doing what we expect. He's looking more and more like a bit of a slow burn in your center wing. I did play him this week purely because of the matchup against the Titans. Obviously, in hindsight, playing Tessinu would have been better, but there's only about a 10-point difference, so I'm not too upset about that. So the first game of the Sunday was the Knights taking on the Dragons, with the Dragons taking this one out 22-13. If anyone watched this game, this looked like a real battle of attrition. Both teams are going at it so hard, and we saw a lot of injuries, unfortunately, for the Knights. There were 4 key ones with Pearce, Hoy, Kurt Mann, and David Clemmer. Pearce obviously had that bit of a pec injury. As at the moment, I think it's looking like a pec tear. I don't quite know what the timeline is on that, but we'll get more information throughout the week. Tex Hoy, he was limping off at halftime, so he only played one half. Kurt Mann obviously had that really bad concussion from that tackle with Ravalawa. And then Clemmer had this knee issue. Clemmer did put some strapping on and he did play throughout the rest of the game, but we'll have to find out during the week essentially what the kind of extent of that injury was. In terms of the really common guys, Mitch Barnett, Connor Watson, Jaden Brayley, all doing really, really well. Mitch Barnett actually with the 75-point effort with no kind of attacking stats apart from the goal, he's looking more and more like a season keeper. I think a lot of people probably had the idea, and including myself too, have Barnett while he's got the goal kicking, hopefully ride up his price increase and then flip him to someone like a Madison, Tohu Harris, Angus Crichton. But to be honest, the way that it's looking at the moment, he's looking more and more like a season keeper. I don't see any reason why we should be trading him out of our teams. He's shown he's very consistent, and even with Ponga returning to the Knights side sometime soon, that could be even better for him. He might lose the goal kicking potentially, but with the Knights, with Ponga, I imagine they'd play more on their left side, which is his edge, and he might potentially then get some more attacking stats. Jaden Brayley is just looking super consistent at scoring the 65. I think the way that he's performing at the moment, I don't see again any reason why you'd want to be flipping him to your Damien Cook or Harry Grant. He's looking a very solid play at hooker. I think potentially long term it might be a case where we have Jaden Brayley as a reserve hooker and then go with Harry Grant and Damien Cook as your primary dummy half. And Connor Watson again just showing kind of the utility value he has for the Knights. Well, I think he played at lock, I think he played a bit of time at dummy half, and I think he played at fullback towards the end of the game. So he's showing that he's super flexible, and I think he came on obviously off the bench. Which is looking more and more common which is probably, to be honest, good for his SuperCoach potential. He comes on after about 20 minutes playing against a bit more tired forwards, and he's got good footwork, and he's able to ball play a little bit and capitalise on that. And that really does then boost his attacking stats for SuperCoach, and I think he's still a very good hold in our sides. In terms of the Dragons, I don't own any players at the moment. Tarek Sims obviously had an amazing game, but I don't think he's really someone you'd be considering for your second row forward option, like on a consistent basis. The real guy that I'd probably be looking at is Zach Lomax, and he didn't do too well this game, only scoring the 41. But the Dragons overall have shown pretty decent signs. I think they've won 3 games in a row now. They look to actually be playing with a little bit of heart, and they do seem to be putting a lot of effort in. Obviously, a lot of people would have thought coming into the season that they might have been the wooden spoon contenders, but they're showing at the moment in this brief patch of form that they are looking pretty okay side. And with Lomax, he does have this knack of still being able to score well, even when the Dragons themselves aren't doing too well. But that 41-point effort is a little bit discouraging, but hopefully that just means his price will go down quite a bit, and we can flip one of our cheap centre wings to someone like him. I think that's definitely going to be the play for me with Zach Lomax, but we'll wait for his price to hopefully bottom out before getting him in. But apart from that, to be honest, there's not really too much interest that I have in other Dragons players. The second game on this Sunday was the Roosters taking on the Warriors 32 points to 12, taking this one out pretty comfortably in the end. A lot of real important SuperCoach talking points out of this one. We'll start off with the cheapy halfback discussion. So a lot of people are saying, should I get Sean O'Sullivan or should I get Sam Walker? I think for me, it's Sam Walker 100%. O'Sullivan has looked okay. I think he scored like a 70 in his first game. Yeah, and 44 in this game is not too bad as well. But Walker looked really good in that Roosters side. He scored 81. I think he had a try assist, and he got a bit of the goal kicking at the end of the game as well, when Takeaho went off the field. So I think Sam Walker is looking like the best cheapy halfback to go for. He is priced cheaper than Sean O'Sullivan as well, which is very useful. And for me, if I don't do it this round, I'll be the next round. Jamal Fogarty to Sam Walker is locked in for a trade for me. Depending on how much value Fogarty loses, I'll still be able to hopefully get around 200k in the bank, and I can use that to make upgrades elsewhere in my side. But yeah, Sam Walker, I think obviously a lot of people would already have him from the start of the season. It's quite funny how in 1 week, last week when people had Nathan Cleary out of their team, Sam Walker didn't play essentially. So no one had a backup halfback. A week later, he's named in the starting team and he gets 81. So it's funny what a week can do. But yeah, he's looking like the best cheapy halfback for me. Brett Morris just continues to pile on the points. He's looking like he's one of the best finishers that I've ever seen. He just scores tries from like small opportunities that not many other people would. Getting the 118-point effort, he's got 3 tons in his first 4 games, which is ridiculous. And it doesn't help that he started so expensive, but there is an argument. Some would say, like Alex Johnson, that if he doesn't score tries, he doesn't really do too well. But he just keeps scoring the tries. The Roosters are always going down his side. They've got that really attacking side with Joey Manu, Tedesco chips in, and BMOS. So I think Brett Morris, a lot of people I think would have jumped on him before his initial price rise. And obviously I wouldn't consider selling him at all, to be honest. If you've got him into your team, I think you have to stick with him for the long term. You invested that much in your centre wing, you have to stick with him. And if you don't own him already, it's going to be one of those things where I think he is looking more and more like close to a must-have if he keeps scoring like this as well. We can't even bank on the fact that he'll go down in value, right? He just keeps getting these massive scores. Hopefully he does have a few games with a little bit quieter and we can maybe pick him up when he's a little bit more affordable. But yeah, he's definitely someone I'm eyeing up to see how I can maybe get a plan to get him into my team. Angus Crichton had a really good game with the 81. I think part of that was down to Tupanua, who unfortunately failed his HIA early in the game, and he only scored 4 points. So I think a lot of the ball went more down Crichton's side, and he scored 81, so kind of what you'd expect out of Angus. Obviously, I don't own him at the moment. I did sell him in that week where he had that suspension, and I moved to Mitch Barnett, but that did allow me to get in Brian To'o, and I also brought in Dave Fifita instead of Crichton at the moment, but Fifita scored more than Crichton. And in the week that I brought in Barnett over Crichton, Barnett scored more than him. So at the moment, I think that was a smart trade at the moment. I did burn an extra trade, but I'm up on the points, which is at the end of the day, that's the name of the game. But Crichton is still showing what a gun second row forward option he is. He's definitely someone I'm looking to bring into my team soon as well. Tedesco had a relatively quiet game, only scoring the 74. Obviously, really early on, he got the line break and the try. So I think a lot of captainers were really excited to see that. Obviously a lot of people would have been going with Teddy instead of Pappenhausen and really hoping that he could have gone close to matching him. But apart from that try, he looked threatening at times, but it just wasn't the night for him. It's quite a luxury to say that a quiet game for James Tedesco is a 74 when you'd happily normally take that as your captain. But we've just come to expect so much more from him, which is probably a little bit unfair to him. But, no panic over him. I think quite a few people did actually sell him to the likes of Pappenhausen or Latrell to kind of capitalise on the next month moving forward. But I think we had some good signs that even with the new halves combination, Teddy just, to be honest, he looks more and more involved. And I still think he's going to be the number one fullback to get into our teams. And Takeaho, with a 68-point effort, pretty happy to own him. He's been ticking along quite nicely. Probably not having the upside that I was maybe hoping for. Or maybe I was expecting too much. I think with the goal kicking, I was hoping for maybe like a 65 average to jump up to like a 75. Just hasn't quite panned out that way at the moment. But, the 68, I'll happily take that. He plays pretty big minutes still at the Roosters, and so I'm very happy to have him in my front row forward. In terms of the Warriors, Tohu Harris just keeps ticking along, scoring the 72. It did include a try as well. Kind of funny, I always say with Tohu Harris, he doesn't really have much upside, and then he goes and scores a try and just kind of puts egg on my face. I was eyeing up either Tohu Harris or Fafita this week. Obviously I went with Fafita, and for this week at the moment I'm pretty happy with that trade. But Tohu Harris again is looking more and more like he's always a pod option at second row forward. I think it's just because he doesn't have that flair most of the time. He did score the try this week, but most of the time he's just all base. But definitely someone I think I'm looking to get into my second row forward at some point during the season. Whether that means upgrading the likes of Tessie New and then hopefully moving to like a Tohu Harris via the dual. So that might be the strategy to go for. But yeah, Tohu Harris, he just keeps ticking along. Unfortunately for the Warriors, Adam Fanua-Blake did have a knee injury, so he only scored the 19 points. So if there are any owners of him, he has looked quite good, but he has picked up a couple of injury niggles to begin the season already, which isn't very encouraging. So I think obviously, depending on the extent of this injury, he would become a trade out. But even if he's deemed to be kind of fully fit, I wouldn't be looking to bring him in still anytime soon, given that 19 is probably going to have his value go down in price a little bit. And so hopefully you can pick him up a little bit cheaper maybe. But it's a little bit concerning to see a couple of injuries from him already to begin the season. Tuivasa-Sheck did pretty decent as well with a 63-point effort. Again, he's sometimes fairly consistent. But again, as I've said before, I think Teddy, Pappenhausen and Latrell are looking like the top three fullbacks to go for. So I just don't see how many people are going to be fitting into a Tuivasa-Sheck. The last player I wanted to touch on was Dave Fusatua. Only scoring the 22. He's just been a bit of a letdown as well. He's only averaging around the mid-20s. Again, he's probably going to be one of those guys who I just hold in my centre wing. Won't play him week on week, but just hopefully he gets a try sometime soon, and hopefully can just go up in value a little bit before I flick him on. So the final game of the round, we saw the Parramatta Eels take out this one over the Tigers, 36-22. The Eels just never were quite able to put away the Tigers. The Tigers kept coming back, but at the end they got some junk points and were able to win this with the scoreline looking quite comfortable. So I've been quite impressed actually with the likes of say Adam Doueihi and Luke Brooks actually. They've been putting together some good performances themselves, and also that has been translating to some SuperCoach points. So Doueihi, he'd be an absolute pod at 5'8". At the moment I've got Dylan Brown and then he's outperforming him. So, I could make the argument that maybe I should go for someone like Doueihi. But, I'm actually quite impressed with how they've been performing both real life and in SuperCoach in the past couple of weeks. I think Luke Brooks really did kind of turn around after that Roosters game where he didn't put on the best performance. So, if you are looking for some real pod options in your halves, Doueihi and Luke Brooks potentially could be some good options. Luciano Leilua, again, he showed his potential for some really good ball running and was able to provide that offload which led to Jacob Little's try. And speaking of Little, he performed pretty well again in this game, scoring another try. I think that's now 3 tries in his first 4 games. So that's really been able to help bump up his average. So for those who did hold on to him, that's a really good move on your part. I did make the move to Schuster, but if you didn't make that trade, with that 71 now, he should be going up in value quite a bit more. And so he'll still be a really good cash cow option. Stefano Otikamanu, really happy to see him getting 54 with that try. He scored in back-to-back games now, and that's just really good. That's going to really boost his cash cow potential. So I'm really excited to have him kind of create more money for me. At the end of the day, probably will look to offload him to a gun front row forward down the line, but he's really making some good coin to begin the season. And Dane Laurie, scoring that try, not his biggest game, but, the 53 points at his price. Again, he's showing that he's looking more and more potentially like a keeper in our centre wings. He is looking a lot more reliable than some other cheapies, giving around 50 to 60 points a game. Some negatives, I guess, for the Tigers would be like Nofaluma only getting the 39 points. I think at this point in time, if you are holding him, he is going to be dropping in price quite a bit. For us non-owners, it's really good signs for him to hopefully be going down more in value, and then we can pick him up a little bit later in the season when he's decreased in value. In terms of the Eels, some notable good performances here. Isaiah Papali'i scored the try and getting up to the 90 points. Unfortunately, obviously, Ryan Madison was a late withdrawal. That really does sting for, I guess, anyone who did hold on to him hoping that he would come and play. Probably good from the Eels' part that they were very cautious with him given his history. But again, this kind of highlights the uncertainty around kind of trying to predict when guys can return from concussion, especially guys like Madison who've had a good history of it. So anyone that did trade him, obviously that's looking like a good move now, and hopefully he should go down in value. My plan at the moment is either going to be to upgrade Jordan Ricky or Tessie New to someone like Madison, but I haven't really fully got that strategy in place because Tessie and Ricky have been performing pretty well at the moment. But it's good that he's at the moment hopefully just going to go down in value, that we can pick him up a little bit cheaper later. Blake Ferguson coming with that absolute junk second try at the end of the game. Obviously for any owners of him, you'd be laughing with that. That really did bump up his score. He was absolute rocks and diamonds in this game. The first half he didn't want to go anywhere near a ball, slipping over, kept dropping the ball. But then the second half, goes and scores a double with that junk time try. So obviously, if you're at the end of the day, it's all about the points. Doesn't matter if you got him in the 80th minute or the second minute. He's got the 90 points, which is a really good effort from him. And the Eels do have some good games coming up. In the next 4, they've got the Dragons, the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Bulldogs. So any Fergo owners, he's looking a very, very good hold. And for non-owners, I think he's looking like a good pickup. I'm certainly eyeing him up in my centre wing position. Reid Marnie coming in really good with a 78 performance. He is looking more and more like a good, potentially season-long keeper, the way that he's performing. And he was able to get a try assist in this game too. So he is showing more and more a bit of attacking threat. And even early in the game, I noted that kick he did out of dummy half, which I'm seeing him do a little bit more of, which is a good sign. Takes the pressure off Mitchell Moses, and something I didn't really see him do too much of last season. So that's really good indication from him. Gutherson obviously, chipping in again with a good 77-point game this round. He does. He obviously will continue to perform well, and I think with these easy games coming up, he should do so as well. It's just hard to kind of maybe get him into your team unless you're going a real pod route of, maybe potentially trading out Teddy for Gutho to free up money and capitalize on the Eels' good draw. Not something I'd recommend myself. Teddy has given us no indication as to why we'd want to trade him in the first place, and it's not like Gutherson is considerably outperforming, say, like Teddy, and he's not at the moment. If you do have Gutherson in your team, I think he's still looking to be a good hold. Dylan Brown, obviously, I probably could keep talking about him the most, given he's the only Eels player that I own at the moment. Again, it's just one of those times where he's got really solid base, but he's just not offering any kind of attacking upside. It just seems that when he plays, he kind of he gets the ball, he shovels it on to Gutherson and say the set plays, and then Gutho will do the work and get the try assist, and Dylan Brown might be lucky to get like a try contribution. Obviously, that base is amazing. Getting 51 points without really doing anything in terms of attack is really, really good floor. But at the moment, he's only offering the floor, and I'm not getting any ceiling from him. But at the moment, I think I'm still going to be looking to hold him, to be honest. I think with that draw coming up, I feel like this is the time that I want to hold him. If it looks like he's still offering not much else in terms of attacking upside with these, after these easy games, then that's probably the time that I'd be looking to sell him. But I guess at that point in time, he's probably gone down in value so much that it might be just worth holding him. So yeah, he looks like someone I'm probably just going to be hanging around my team. Obviously, I'm not unhappy with the 51. I'm just hoping for a little bit more from him. Alright guys, those are my thoughts on the round 4 games. Obviously this was a massive high scoring round. A lot of really big scores going around. At the moment, I'm on 1,486 before updates. I'm really hoping and praying that some updates will go in my favor and I can hopefully crack the 1,500 point mark. I've never been able to do that before, so that would be a really big achievement. At my current rank, I was around top 5%, so I'll be keen to see how that kind of moves me up the rankings when lockout ends. But guys, do please let me know in the comments below what you guys scored. I'm really keen to see what kind of a lot of others are scoring. And if you guys like the video, would really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing, as I'll be putting more videos out the 2021 SuperCoach season. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next one.